Okay, there we go.
Got it.
I like her voice.
Yeah.
Wants
I
us
don't know
to-
if that's Siri or. I find Siri is getting a little bit snooty these days.
Who is?
Siri,
Hmm.
sometimes I will inadvertently touch it and she has some kind of comment on about the last thing that I had to say. I can't give an example, but she
We've
takes
been-
life interesting.
I kind of like her snootiness from time to time.
Yeah.
It's very clever how they work that in. It's how do they do that?
Well, hello, Bob.
Hello.
Hey, Bob.
Bob. Hello, Bob.
Yeah, the best one was back in the early days. I asked Siri to, what I wanted was for her to look up something. It had something to do with theology. And Siri answered back, sorry, humans have religion. I only have silicon. Loved it.
You got to give it credit, though. That's clever.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And I did say it, not her, but it.
Yeah, it comes a little difficult to think that sometimes because especially with the AI. Have any of you experimented with these AI things like Chat GPT and
Mm-mm.
there-
Not I. No.
there's a new search engine called Neva, Neeva, which they also have a browser, but it utilizes AI to give you a narrative answer to whatever your query is. So if you're looking for things about, I don't know, whatever your keyword that you would enter into Google, and it gives you all these results. Well, Neva puts that into a narrative form and kind of tells you then what such and such a site has to say about it.
Hey, Frank.
Hi,
Hey, Frank.
Hi, Frank.
I'm still I still haven't resolved the Wi-Fi thing here.
You're on your
I
side.
went to get a booster, but it's complicated by where the router is, and there's a lot of routers around. So, but the contract has been signed, and within a month or so, we should have decent Wi-Fi.
Good.
You look great.
Well,
I
that
mean,
looks,
the picture is very, very good.
I also haven't been able to get the gallery. Just I've been able to
Right.
see one person at a time. But
Hey,
now I
Norm.
can see the whole gallery.
Hello.
hello, Norm.
Yeah.
Here comes
How's it
Norm.
going?
Hold on.
Are you laying down, Norm?
No, I'm sitting down, but I'm going to be. I'm at a retreat, so I'm gonna have to leave. But I just wanted to say hello to everybody.
Hello.
Oh, well,
Hi.
good. Where are you on retreat?
And pray for
Hey,
us
Pomona.
for sinners.
At the
In where?
Curcio place, Pomona, at a
Oh,
Curcio
okay.
place.
Oh, good.
But it's for COVID, it's young adults, and we got 40 young adults here. We're trying to see if we can get them to come to church.
Excellent, excellent.
Good luck.
Oh, we have good luck. It's an amazing retreat. It's amazing.
Well, offer
It's
them
like
pizza.
Curcio.
Who's
Offer
that?
them pizza.
Offer them pizza.
That
Offer
can't
them
be.
Hasta la
pizza.
pizza. There you go.
Is that Tim Melmy?
That looks
That's
like
all right. This is me. This is me.
You look a little
Tim, you're
different.
outside.
Anyway, we'll see you guys.
You got
Okay.
a
We'll
hat.
the beach.
see you guys.
okay, Norm.
I'm-
Happy
Take care,
Norm.
Norm. God
Bye,
bless.
Norm.
Hey,
Enjoy.
Don't forget the pizza.
Unlike Bob B, I am authentically on the beach.
Oh,
what
beach?
It's called Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Yes.
Well, I'm
Where you
only
gonna be
3
next
blocks
week?
up from the beach.
I can see your palm trees behind you, Tommy.
Right.
I remember Myrtle Beach on a car trip while I was in college going to Florida. Stopped at Myrtle Beach and went in for a swim. And damn if 3 fins didn't pop up right around me.
Oh,
I
yeah.
went,
Oh.
oh my God, this is it. Hell, I didn't know the difference between porpoise and shark fins. The people on the beach were watching me freak out. And when I got there, they were all laughing and they went, those were porpoises. They just wanted to play.
Yeah,
I'll never
either,
forget, I'll never forget Myrtle Beach.
yeah, they're either porpoises or dolphins. I can't tell the difference from when they're out there swimming.
Yeah, I kind of cluster, they're the same to me too, so. But they weren't sharks, fortunately.
Did you see in the news about these orcas who are attacking sharks to eat their liver?
No.
That's kind of interesting.
What is it that points people to the liver? That is
They
to
don't know, but one of the theories in the article that I read, one of the theories is that the orcas are smart enough to know exactly how to almost surgically remove the liver.
Jeez.
If they ate the whole shark, it would be messy and it would involve just a lot of work. And the liver, they said, is the most densely nutritious part of the shark. So they just go for the liver, you know, sort of easy pickings. They can just slice in and get the liver and let whoever else wants the shark carcass and go after the next shark.
Jeez.
That's kind of interesting.
It is kind of interesting.
I heard what you said about nutritious. I was thinking maybe spicy, maybe like us. We eat something, we find what's spicy and we go for it.
Well, it could be. Like us, their taste mechanism should direct them to what is most nutritious.
That's nature. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in nature, that's what it does to us. But, you know, with the advent of hyper-processed foods and various artificial concoctions like roasting and grinding up beans and running hot water through them, our taste buds have been accustomed to satisfaction rather than nourishment.
So maybe we need to retrain the orcas. You know,
Or they
Yeah.
us, right?
Or recognize this similarity to us who force feed ducks in order that we can have foie gras.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
There you
Hey,
go.
hey, Tom, as people were coming on, you were speaking about artificial intelligence and the various tools out there. Have you tried any? For example, have you asked, I don't know, chat, the chat, the one that begins with chat. I forget
Chat
what the letter.
GPT. I
Yeah.
did.
So to write a sermon for you, 10 minutes, third Sunday of Lent.
No, but I'm trying to recall now just what I did ask chat to do. See if I can get it up here.
Right. While you're pulling it up, if folks are interested in taking a look at a really good series this past week, New York Times columnist, drawing a blank on his name, but he's the one who had this very strange, scary conversation with another one of these AI things called Bing, where the conversation he said, I got frightened at the very end because Bing was hitting on him to such an extent it had fallen in love with him by the end of the conversation. And he says, and wouldn't let him go, and just said, and here are some ways we can deal with your wife. And I mean, it was
Oh,
totally amazing. You could easily Google it if you wanted, and it'd take you to the author. But he's had a series this week of 5, fifth one today on chat and its potential uses. But
is that the thing from the New York Times?
correct. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
says recline, maybe?
That's awful.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually an email. It's their on tech email, the series today. I started it and I have the I don't know, I can
Yesterday's, I read yesterday's and it was really quite fascinating because it was geared to my level of understanding, which was practically nil with regard to AI. It just took me a step at a time. As I finished the article, I went, did he use AI in putting this article together? He didn't say that he did.
maybe
But-
he'll admit that today.
Yeah, but
I haven't read the last 3 days of it,
uh,
but I thought it was very interesting too.
yeah, you really get a feel, but it sounds like you're the only one who in fact has tried it.
Yeah, I'm having difficulty logging into it and maintaining my alertness for you guys. My alertness such
Not
as
a
it is. I
no
can't
problem. Yeah.
I can't multitask anymore.
You
But
might-
Well, let me ask you a question. Before I logged on, was there any update on George Crook?
no, we
No,
are
we-
eagerly
I-
awaiting that, but
We were waiting for you, Tim.
shall we pray first?
I have one thing to share, and it was a message from Brian Drolet, who was in touch. And I think Betty said there is another alternate treatment that they're preparing to try. I don't know if anybody else heard that, but
Yeah,
it would.
they're gonna try it today.
I hope it doesn't involve orcas.
You're terrible.
Bad.
For your
That was really bad. That was really bad, Thomas. That was so bad it was good.
So,
I'll give
so
you a
next-
little
so-
update after we pray.
Name of the Father,
Son, Holy Spirit.
Hail Mary, full of grace,
Grace.
the Lord is with thee.
Blessed are
Blessed
you.
art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb.
Jesus.
Holy
Holy Mary, Mother of God,
Pray
pray for us sick,
Sinner.
now
Yeah.
at the hour of our death.
Amen.
Who's got the bird?
You still thee thou, huh, Tim?
I'm
No.
still outside. Yeah.
I kind of
No,
left that.
I'm the one who was still thee thou. Tim actually you did you, and then under my influence you caved.
Uh-huh. So you're the thee thouer.
I'm the thee thouer. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
I vaguely
I
remember
have
this.
given up the ghost in favor of spirit, but it's hard for me to
Let go thee thou.
to let go of the thee thou, and part of it I think is grammatical. I'm going to get off on a diatribe here, but I'll try to make it short. What particular interests are doing to our pronoun system is rendering them virtually unintelligible and unusable. You never know who they or their really refers to. If it's referring to an individual who is gender challenged or whatever, or if the same sentence has a group, does they refer to that individual or does they refer to the group? I don't know. So that's my little pet peeve right now. Thou and thee actually are very useful for determining whether it's second person singular or plural. And if you just say you, sometimes it's ambiguous whether it means you individually or you all plural.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think we did a good service to our language when we decided, oh, these and thous are just archaic and we dropped them.
You sound like Father
Good point.
Well, one of the things that Flynn taught me was the importance of clarity.
With good reason. I hope we go back to Ned. Is there more to say about George Crook?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I spoke with both George. He's hard to get now. He doesn't
Yeah,
answer his phone because he either doesn't hear it or hears it and then forgets that it was ringing. The first thing he said to me, beginning of the week, was I took a bath, a shower, and it was exhausting. He just barely got done with it. And when he got out of the shower, he looked in the mirror and he said, I saw somebody from Auschwitz coming into my bathroom and look out at me. He has lost so much weight and is so bony. That's the way he put it. And I said, George, yeah, you're thin, but you know, with some of the stuff that Betty's trying to give you, you'll fill out a little more. He now understands that you can, and always did, I think, or trusted, that one of those rounds of the whiz-bang new recently approved therapy that he took can almost immediately give you an understanding about whether it will work or it will not work. So Tom, you really nailed it last time. He's having trouble taking his meds and also eating. His legs are very, very swollen. Feet, very, very swollen. Apparently, they haven't decided for sure, but they think it was the cause. It was caused by the therapy that he got last Friday, and he was given a number of diuretics. I guess there's a whole bunch out there. I don't know, but he got several different kinds. And when I saw his legs and feet, they were very swollen. And he said, you should have seen them. Betty said he looked like an elephant. Maybe this is too much detail, but you know, it's what he's going through, and it affects his psychology when he sees this stuff. He was really shook up when he saw whom he thought was a refugee from Auschwitz. Yesterday, he went to see his primary care physician, who was going to treat or examine, excuse me, examine and try to understand the swelling and do what he could to give him the appropriate treatment to get the swelling down. And today he's, as John just mentioned, at I don't think he's at Cedars. I don't remember where he said he is going to have another round of chemo, but it's a more traditional chemo that has been successful in other instances or situations like George is in. And so he's at the moment as we speak, getting that chemo. And Dr. Rosenblum, for some reason or other, which he did not explain, thought that this just might affect in a positive way his situation. Situation being, as you know, the cancer digging itself into the liver and now moving onto the tissues of the lining of his stomach. He slurs a lot. He has trouble moving. I think I'm going to go over there and take him out because he can walk. I've found that out. He's loath to move unless he gets some help. He can't stand the walker, but within some minutes he'll get onto the walker, and with either Betty or I helping him. He gets his clothes on, and we can take off. And once we're out, especially if it's a nice day, which we have not had many of around here, he cheers up and then begins to walk without the walker. Although
Oh, good.
Yeah, he lists, so he walks. I walk behind him, but he's pretty solid,
Excuse me, Ned, for a second.
Yeah.
I have a device a pendant that goes around my neck in case of fall.
Yeah.
Notifies people. Does George have something like that?
No, he doesn't. And that's, Betty's been trying to get him to use a bunch of stuff like the walker, to eat, at least the cane, to do things. And he says, I don't know why, except that I don't want to do all these things. But I do realize that nutrition is utterly important. So I'm trying to eat, but the taste is not only neutral, tasteless. It does taste, but it tastes bad. The crackers, or like last week, the sausage, he said it tasted like cardboard dipped in something that's awful. So he doesn't want to eat something that tastes awful because it may bring on nausea, which he has. That's it. Really, just a lot of manifestations of it, of his, sickness. And he says that his back has returned. That is, the very bad pain that he's used to get from his back is come back. Excuse me. I think that'll do it.
Hey, Ned, how is Betty handling all of this?
Well, that's an extra added attraction here.
Because Bob C. and Frank, you have been caregivers for a long time, and it doesn't really take a toll on the caregiver?
Well, you guys can talk to that, but it's amazing how much it takes out of them.
Yeah. Well, hope that's one of the pluses of and I'm not pushing his being in hospice, but that certainly is one of the pluses. The team is trained to keep an eye out, pay attention to, attend to the primary caregiver, and typically that, in this case, of course, that would be Betty. So, but that's certainly one of the pluses, because it does take a hell of a toll on them. I mentioned there would, in some of the programs, they build in respite care to have someone from the team or outside come and take over for a day and make sure that the Bettys of this world just can get out. This is, of course, if no one's forced to do anything. That's you typically find that very welcome and very helpful. So enough said.
It turns out that for at least a decade, if not longer, Betty arranged for and paid for monthly future care. And just now, starting last week, toward the end of the week, they wanted to fire that up, activate it. And this woman came this week, and George was just very not happy about having someone other than his wife care for him. But he says they have tender hands, he says. She helps him get out of bed, and it feels right how she does it. There's no tentativeness in where to pick his legs up or his feet, or take him by the waist and pull and push and all that kind of stuff. He really likes that, and now accepts this woman because she really knows what she's doing, and he's so grateful. Betty, I think, is going through some weird responses, reactions. It gets to the point where you feel like you're going to scream, and then you adjust and do what needs to be done. And that very act of having conquered the instinct to just scream doubles somehow. I don't understand that, but maybe, Bob or Frank, you guys, there's an insidiousness about continuing to give, and then there being a backlash of your mind and your body to helping more. And so you got to get away, just get away. And that way, everything, psychology, body, whatever else is engaged, begins to relax and take care of itself or of herself. And then she begins her battery starts to renew.
Ned, you really got my attention on this. What about Betty's family and friends network? Are you aware? Is some of that a factor in what you're describing?
It is. Betty's brother has been taking George, not all the time, but sometimes, to the hospital or to wherever he needs to go for a procedure. And that's helped a lot, just a lot. He's also installed.
Her brother, the bishop.
No, another brother. He's not seen the brother all that often. He's sometimes in Texas, where he began as a priest, and where he has just tons of friends. Excuse me. The brother, his name is Rudy, I think. Rudy or Ralph, I'm sorry, I can't remember. And he's installed these handles on doorways, sides of doorways, where George can hold himself and cross the threshold of wherever he's going. And that's also helped a whole lot. And he's beginning to accept the fact that he needs help to walk, that he can manage. He can manage it. It's appearance and it's recollection of people whom he knows that are on them, and he doesn't feel like he is like them. But in the end, he says, yeah, I am like them. And I need to use the aids, the helps that those, the cane and the wheelchair and the walker provide. But
sounds like a reinforcement of the fighter that is still in George Crook.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. Doesn't want to concede that he is as feeble as he is getting, and he uses that word. And when he used the word, the description of himself as someone coming out of Auschwitz, bones and bent over and all of that kind of stuff. That was hard to hear. I'm sure it's hard to. So
on the other hand, that description to me indicates that he still has a wit about him.
Yes, he does do that. I mean, he does have that.
I remember My wife, Mary Alice, had her first round of chemo. She lost about 70 pounds. And at one point after that, she said, however, I do not recommend this approach to weight loss.
Mhm.
Keeping the sense of
It
humor.
it is pretty awful. Just from being there with her. And so your description of his looking in the mirror and seeing what he saw, sounds so right on.
Yeah.
And good that he could still have that sense of humor. So good sign.
It's
So my
it's not easy.
experience,
I'm sorry, Frank, go ahead.
my experience wasn't with cancer. So from what I'm hearing about people who had experience with cancer, there's an added factor there, namely the uncertainty. Whereas, with my wife, she had a stroke and there was a certain amount of certainty there. I mean, there's always uncertainty because if you have a stroke, you're, kind of attract all sorts of flus and all sorts of other things, in and out of hospitals, etc. But the two things that struck me and I would like to get back to Betty, and that is something that you said, Ned, about she has these moments and then it kind of rejuvenates her. Everybody has those. I mean, I used to say to myself, the most common thing that caregivers say is, I can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
And then they turn around and go right back and do it again.
Mhm.
And the second thing is, there's a certain guilt
Yes.
that's hard to get over because George is going to make Betty feel that she's the only one in the world that can get him through this. And that limits, like for instance, my wife, her sister would come on rare occasion to stay with her for an afternoon so I could get a couple of hours out. And after an hour, her sister would tell me, she would be saying, where's Frank? Where's Frank? Where's Frank? So that dynamic works also on the part of the caregiver. And they have to come to terms with that a little bit, especially if they have someone. It seems to me, George is getting used to this woman who's coming in to help rather quickly.
Yes.
And so the interplay of his getting used to her and the effect that has on Betty is important consideration, it seems to me. And Betty needs a little bit more attention than simply having someone come in to take him to the hospital rather than her.
Yes.
And I don't know exactly what that support is, but I knew it was really important in my experience.
Well, apparently her brother and she talk over the telephone.
Good.
And he comes over and drives sometimes wherever they need to go, and then he's doing these things like putting these handles in various places in the home, bathroom, going out, and I try, but mostly unsuccessfully, to focus on her and ask her how she's doing, and she always starts out with, "Oh, okay,"
Yeah.
And then we go into, if the situation allows, how tired she is, and to some extent how guilty she feels, because she says, "I don't want to do stuff anymore."
Yeah.
And I know I have to.
Right.
And so she'll go out for a few minutes and then say to herself, what if George can't walk? What if George has fallen? All these what ifs.
Yeah.
And then she just stops and gets back into the car and comes home.
Yeah.
It might be a good idea, by the way, to just ask her someday if she'd like to go out for a quick lunch.
Yep.
Emphasize the quick.
Yeah.
That takes that takes some of the guilt off.
Yeah, yeah. Along those lines, Ned, Frank, it would be very unusual for a infusion clinic not to have a support group for the primary caregiver and or any family member who's spending a lot of time with the patient. I have no idea whether or not Betty might be interested in something like that, but it can be extremely helpful because those issues that you're surfacing and are addressed just as part of the ongoing. And most of these groups are drop-in. You don't have to go every week or anything like that, and you're welcome to come. And it consists of a facilitator who's usually pretty darn good and knows the ins and outs of chemo and the various effects of the chemo, and especially the impact on the family and caregivers. So that may be something you might want to just on your own sort of find out and maybe gently suggest to her. Who knows? You maybe find out about it. Just say, hey, I just learned about this. I'd like to go with you to one of the sessions. Of course, that puts a burden on you, Ned, but that might be one way of taking some pressure off. And she'd discover the issues that she has are common to the other caregivers. And they keep these groups small, and people who go usually find them very, very helpful.
What's interesting too is when the being homebound began, Betty listened to the doctor, read the stuff she was given to read, understood what the medications were for, and she was very strong in getting herself up to speed and doing what had to be done. I mean, she is and has been. When George met her, she was the secretary for one of the most successful lawyers in Southern California, and then she came. They began their relationship, and she came to where George was, and all of those skills and practices were very evident. A lot of the other secretaries that were there were, just not on the same level of service, put it that way. And so at the beginning of this journey with George, especially when he had to stay home, she was very clear she was doing it, and she knew what was done. And George got to the point where he'd say, Betty, what did they say, and how much, and when, and stuff like that. And Betty was just immediately on the spot telling us what needed to be done and how and who said it and all that stuff. And then there's a time when it begins to become so hard, more difficult, and then I can see it's almost like before she's going to do something that she's been asked to do or she knows she must do, there's this pause, sometimes just momentary, and then sometimes several minutes, and then she gets herself to do it. And I think she's extremely happy that this caregiver has come into the picture. I mean, very happy. I think I think about the spiritual life and my own, I should say, refusal to surrender a whole bunch of things to the crucified Lord and then to the risen Lord. I don't know why those make a difference to me, but sometimes you just don't want to do it because you can do it. And then finally you realize, as the AA folks say, I'm out of control with respect to this.
Mhm.
I need the help. And finally, the very difficult thing of surrendering happens. And I think she's gone through several phases like that, but she's very happy now that this woman comes, the one with the tender fingers.
Tender fingers.
It's really something. A couple days ago, I was having lunch with one of the Knights. Knights of Columbus. We were thinking about what we have to do for the next meeting and how we're going to announce to people at church that we'd like them to help us financially with children with disabilities and all that stuff. And he asked me a question about my dad. I don't know where that came from, and I started to explain what he wanted me to explain. And I started to cry because all of a sudden, my George just sort of moved into the picture, and I was no longer seeing my dad when he was in such bad situation, and I was seeing George. And I hadn't, I thought I had a reasonable amount of, what does Ignatius say, indifference? But it just gets to you. And I just sat there and cried for a while. And he said, "That's okay, Ned. Just, don't worry about it. Let's sit here. We're in a restaurant."
Yeah, don't worry about it. Thanks a lot.
People around you kind of,
This food really shits.
This whole thing is just another dimension of life and just another way that we need
Yeah.
sure somehow. I don't know.
The ways
And
on
that's
everybody.
and that's a good point, is that it's kind of like, are we looking into the future? I mean, look around who's on this screen.
That
There's
too.
not any young person in this screen. And what I'm impressed by, Ned, is your love for George. And I think, and I know you're not doing it to get accolades, but I think it is wonderful, the friendship that you're showing to him and stepping in and helping care for him. Good for you, man. Good for you.
It's
Yep.
not as much as I'd like, and I feel guilty about it. And sometimes I wish I were more empathetic.
And then it goes, that's natural. I mean, caregivers all the time say, "Oh, am I doing enough? Oh, I'm not adequate. Oh, I'm not." And they are. So I say, take Tim's accolade and don't say anything more.
Amen.
Amen.
It's your spiritual
Yeah.
director, Ned.
Now, does that mean because my accolades are in short supply, Frank?
Because you have,
No, Bob Bono made a
look,
significant comment
you have
right
a
there.
you have a
Ned?
red ribbon
Yes,
on your
yes, Tom.
shirt, Tim.
I
You
do.
have a
I
red
do.
ribbon on your shirt, and you
Yeah,
just
what's
said
that all
that
about?
to Ned.
Now, if I understood him correctly, Bob Bono said that Tim's your spiritual director, so listen to him.
That is an honor I could never live up to. No way. So I'm gonna tell you what I'm telling you what I'm thinking of. I've talked to Ned about this, and Ned, a couple of weeks ago, you made a comment that George kind of had a sense that things were over. I didn't say that right, but that his life was growing near to an end. Do you think he still has that perspective?
Yes, he thinks it's close, but he wants to fight it to the end, to be actively warring against this till the end.
That's often a hard thing for people who love him, like the Bettys, the Neds, the rest of you guys, I've not known him as long, but I can understand why you might care so much about him. But that's so hard for us to deal with and accept. And the bottom line still is, each one of us is going to die. Or we used to say, dying is nothing, but the dying process can be a bitch. I mean, it can be really hard, but dying itself is nothing. And so everyone, as they say, everyone sort of dies in their own way, and you get a pretty, it's not far off when you hear the folks say in this field too, pretty much people, die for the most part the way they lived. And so whatever the dominant styles might have been in their lifetime, that's probably how the end of life is going to go too. And now, having said that, everything I just said and there are exceptions to everything.
And yeah, and if I may, some of you know this story, but I was teaching a Bible study 15, 20 years ago, and my mother and father were members of the Bible study. So I'm sitting there looking at the group, and I called on my dad to read Paul to the Romans. And maybe some of you know, he got to the end of the reading, his elbows went up and he went to heaven. He died in scripture. And I remember that as incredible blessing. And I can hold on to that, It may be a George Crook extended challenge. It may be sudden, but Ned, you mentioned the risen Lord. I tend to focus on the Holy Spirit. I'm in the hands of the Holy Spirit, and it's not mine to know, but my prayer is focused there. I'll leave it to you.
Well, the risen Lord sends his Holy Spirit. So
exactly,
there's no real distinction there. There might be parsing a relationship in human terms, but
that's the word, Tom.
That's all beyond, the reality is beyond any parsing that we can do.
Just like thee and thou.
Something, well, yeah.
How old is George?
He's 81.
Oh, he's
82, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is he 2 years older than us, Ned?
No, but I always think about it in juxtaposition to myself. He was born in February, and I was born in November, and I'm now 80, and no, he's 81.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
He's 81.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, 81.
And there's just I'm 80 November 21st. He's 81 February 2nd.
He was 81. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think he's
why didn't he act more mature, Ned?
He is. You mentioned somebody mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm just listening, I'm not looking at who's talking sometimes, that you die as you have lived. I don't know whether that's consistent, but as a lawyer, he was an excellent, great lawyer. I had to justify several times to the general counsel of the company when I would hire him. That's your friend, isn't it? Yeah. Well, why are you getting your friend? Why don't we get a good lawyer? And he figured that my friend just automatically meant that I was not getting the best person for the job. And then I'd have to show him again. One time I had all of the members of the firm, there were only 5, come to my office and invited the general counsel in. He came in and looked around, and I introduced them all. I had to tell them what they had accomplished, what cases they had won before he said, "Oh, that's right," and then he'd leave. Fine, no problems. George never gave up, and even when he thought he had a solid case with all the appropriate evidence, all the appropriate rejoinders to what the other side was going to be saying, both emotional, psychological things to say to the jury, he'd have everything to respond that he needed. And if he didn't have it yet, or he didn't feel he had it, he just kept on going till he got it. He and his partner, a guy by the name of Henry Tovmassian, I think he's mentioned him in the past.
Yes.
This was a big environmental case, and George and Henry went and into a hotel and used a hotel room for about 2 weeks to prepare for the trial. And I walked in, and there were stacks of papers all over the place. It was a mess, to the person who walked in. And then Henry said, "Oh, well, that's that, and that's that," and they're in that position because we're going to review them yet again in this order, so that if our imaginations connect, maybe we'll get some ideas that we haven't had yet. And I, it made all kinds of sense. It was a mess, but and I left, and then the guy who was the leader of that category of law that George was helping us with came in, and he looked around. He is not a litigator. He's a brain and managed his lawyers. He looked around and stood there and put his hands on his waist and turned around and walked off. And then called me and said, "You sure that's this guy? We're 2 weeks away from trial, blah, 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 blah." I said, "Well, you've been talking with him." George was very, very angry because he really didn't know what he was doing. He had never been in litigation, etc. But that stands out in my memory of George's preparation procedures, and he nailed that. He and Tovmassian nailed that case. But
maybe Alvin Bragg should hire him before he goes to trial with Donald Trump.
My point is that he just never gives up, and here he knows. The last thing that we talked about Friday last was Betty looking at George and saying, "George, how long?" Do you remember? I said, I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, you did.
His response was, "Weeks." And then she looked at him and said, "Months, certainly not a year. So maybe 6 months." And so he's very, at least he believes that it's near, it's close. But he won't, "Don't give me that chair. I don't need it. I can walk. I don't want that woman to help me. I want you to be here with me." Yes, we're going to try another round of another kind of chemo. And he hadn't told us that. Remember, Betty was really surprised. "What? You hadn't said that," etc. And he shouldn't, because he can't remember stuff. I'm getting too into it now. I'm sorry.
So we ought to be careful, I think, about letting someone who's in a long process of dying thinking that surrender and giving up is the same thing as letting go. And that, You know, my image of someone, especially who's taking a while to die, is the one of the prodigal son, the father whose son has been away for a long time. And the old standard image is the switch goes off and you're knocking on the door of the pearly gates. Whereas I think what happens is that someone who has time to die like that, kind of begins to realize that that loving father is actually running down the pathway to meet him, rather than standing at the door and saying, well, you did this and you did that and you did the other thing, etc., or didn't do it. And so that the experience of dying turns from, for someone who believes like that, I think, turns from, your natural intent to beat this and not give into it, etc., to a kind of a gentling into an opening for what's coming. So there's the language of giving up and surrender, it seems to me, begins to fade in terms of the fact that you realize that the loving God is coming down the road to meet you.
Yeah,
That's beautiful, Frank. That's beautiful.
you've said that once before, Frank, and I can't thank you enough for that.
Nicely put.
Image. Yeah.
This is a bit tangential, but not really. What's going through my mind is I really identify with what Frank is saying. Our way of living and celebrating in liturgically what is happening in our lives individually and community does address that if we really look at the nature of the liturgy, the whole idea of viaticum, and the whole idea of anointing being towards facing whatever we have to face in a healthy way rather than a sick way. Even if what we have to face is sickness, we're facing sickness and even mortality and death in a healthy way rather than a sick way. But the liturgy does, I think, provide the tools for being a part of that process of dying in a very, very beautiful way. But we tend not to even have a clue about what the richness is there, or how to unfold that richness. Now, somehow or other, you're telling me that I'm telling me that I really, really do need to get in touch with Paul Dotson, because I think the story about Paul Dotson immediately going to celebrate Mass with George was an awareness of the importance of viaticum as accompaniment on the journey.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think sadly I have not been in much touch with Paul. Maybe I need to do that, because I think that there is something and maybe we can learn. I don't know do you know if Paul has been in touch with George after that, Ned?
No, John.
Is he one of your classmates?
Yes.
Yeah.
All the way back to 1956.
That's way back.
That is way back. Yeah, he was one of us lifers.
He was the kind of guy who had certain
Characteristics.
I'm sorry?
Characteristics.
Okay, I said mannerisms that perhaps to him were natural or just learned in his family. He had a very, very difficult family life. But they felt, to many of us, like dismissals. Like, okay, got enough, go. And then he'd go off on his own. There was, at least with respect to me, Tom and I had a little tiny conversation. I spent some time with yeah. Al Kroll, and he and I were at a parish out in the beginning of the San Joaquin Valley, helping a priest during the summer. And first of all, I was surprised that Paul decided to come with Al and myself, but he did. And one of the times that we were going to a restaurant, trying to find a restaurant to eat, we were driving, and looking at the just pine trees and others, and the winding of the road and the beauty of the ride. And then we passed a home, a very nice, large home. And Paul stopped and said, "Yeah, look at that." And we stopped, looked at it. And I said, "Wow, that's really something." And I don't know why he said this, but he turned around and looked at me and he said, "Well, you'll never have anything like that." And started the car and we took off again. And I thought, where did that come from? So I've always had trouble relating to Paul, but those are the kinds of things that he would do. And I do know that there are people that he loved and that he ministered to in ways that were warm and consistent and loving. I just couldn't put myself in that category, and therefore never really related to him after that. And I mentioned to Tom once, because I went into a rant about him, as maybe I'm doing right now. And I called Tom and apologized, and Tom said, "Well, don't apologize. I'm sometimes in that way too." I live 2 blocks away from him, and I haven't seen him, et cetera. So he's a very enigmatic kind of guy to me.
You're almost describing in some ways some people who are these days, they use the language of being on the continuum.
Yeah.
Asperger's, but at a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
And I really find that helpful. My daughter was visiting with me last week, and she said, "Dad, you might be interested in looking at this. It's a series on Netflix called Love on the Continuum." And it was produced by an Australian producer, director, film company, and filmed there. But it was really very, and my initial reaction was, yeah, sure. I can think of a bunch of other things I'd be more interested in seeing, until she said, "No, take a look." And so in a sense, she sort of sat me down and looked at it. It was just lovely, incredibly sweet. And it reminded me of how, essentially what we talk about and believe and think about what the nature of love is, including the ultimate definition, of who God is. And so the Pauls of this world may have been there, but it's with hindsight, this new category of way of looking at things at least helps me to see there's room for everybody here, and if it takes a diagnostic category, whatever, to help accept it, like it might be for me, so be it. everybody has their gifts, their particular talents, and they can piss us off from time to time, and you know, we want to walk away, but there's still something there. And your initial description of him taking George, I'm not sure that's the word, but celebrating the Eucharist with him in the context of what we were talking about. He saw something right away, cut through all the stuff, and here is Viaticum. How lovely. What a gift.
Mhm.
So I don't know this guy at all, but he's a pretty special guy, at least in my thinking. Kind of like he just cuts right through and can be very annoying socially and stuff like that. That's why I say right away, it feels a little bit like high on the continuum, but still on the continuum somewhere, and a little difficult to relate to, almost the language you were using.
Mhm.
You know what you remind me of is each one of us from time to time reflects or gets feedback on what are the gifts, what are the graces that we've got. And Paul clearly has something to give through liturgy and prayer. Not everybody has that. And it's almost like, I think you all know how much I love sports and how a coach will find who's got the talent for a particular case. And I'm just really touched with the fact that Paul has, through liturgy and sacraments, that gift. I'm very happy to hear it.
You should.
Ned, do you think that George will watch this video? Or is that beyond what he's?
He has not watched most of our videos, but I'll ask him to watch this one.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh no, that's not why I asked that. You know, when I was in high school with you guys, for some reason George and I were very, very close. And maybe it was because, you know, working class parents, you know, dads, you know, and stuff like that. And the joy of my life was oh, it must be 20 years ago or 30 years ago, Johnny, where you organized a get together at Shabera's, and it was George and Teddy Howard and you and me, and we were staying with my sister down in Long Beach, and it was just wonderful. And so I feel like this Zoom group in a really important way has reconnected me with you guys I went to high school with. And so Ned, I've talked to, so my intention is end of April, first part of May to come out there. And I'm wondering, Tom and Johnny and Ned, what you would think about, or would it not be appropriate for several of us at the same time to kind of go and give Betty a day off and go and spend a day with George? And so I'm kind of throwing that out. And maybe Tom, you could say mass, you know, if we could work it out that we could all go at the same time. Johnny, I'm going to be staying with my sister in Seal Beach. I could perhaps come and pick you up. Because I know we don't want you driving on the freeways anymore. So anyway, so Tom and Johnny and Ned, you think about it.
Well, yeah, and I think
and
Norm would want to be included in this too.
I'm sure Norm would. Yes, yes.
Absolutely. And so,
Tom, who'd you say?
Norm.
Norm,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
so Ned,
I wish I were
Ned,
closer.
Ned, can you kind of think through this and how we might be of help to Betty, or would we be a pain in the butt to her if we said we'd like to come and spend some time with George, and you kind of assess what you think George's reaction would be? Could you do that?
Of course, and my almost certain response after checking it out is going to be, you know, onward and upward.
Yeah.
Betty would love the respite. She would also know what it would mean to George, and that would make her very happy,
Good. Yeah.
And I think just our being there would be a respite to her. I mean, she doesn't have to go somewhere else to have something fun and different happening.
I
Yep.
just don't want to give him a bath. I just don't
Yep.
want to be the guy that bathes him, you know.
Well, we'll bring a garden hose.
Maybe take her to lunch, and or out at least for a cup of coffee or something, and
Something like that.
and
Or,
just
or maybe get George to go out with us, you know.
listen to her.
Tim, what do you happen to have specific dates on?
No, I
Are you
don't.
planning to
No.
drive out or fly out?
Oh no, I've got so many Delta frequent flyer miles that this is not it's not an inconvenience. Just was thinking,
Yeah.
we've got some camping commitments up to the middle of April, but then up until the 1st of July, I've got nothing going on. You know, I've got this, and so that I was kind of looking at that late April, all of May kind of thing, Tom. You know.
Why don't you put some tentative dates on that? And
Okay.
you know, send it to me or send it to all of us. And
Count me in big time.
then we can you know, we can massage all of that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I had talked privately with Ned about the idea, and Ned thought that George would be pleased. But you know what? I don't want to do anything that would make it feel like, oh, well, you're near death's bed, and you know that's why I'm coming. You know, trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
position this whole thing.
But on the other hand, and for our planning, you know, George's situation changes day by day.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what we're talking about is something a month out from here, and you know, we're going to need, if this is going to happen, and I love to see it happen, and we'll work on it, but you know, we're all going to have to stay very flexible too, as to
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, make
Yeah.
plans that are definite, but plans that are changeable.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get that.
it may be, Tim, that it becomes more urgent, and I don't use the word urgent, you know, in that, you know, there's going to be sirens and all that. Although, but maybe it's going to happen in June, that or late May or something like that. So I think Tom's absolutely right. We need to have some flexibility. I'm scheduled for my left knee replacement. Did I make any sense? You look puzzled, Tim.
No, you're making a lot of sense. No, you are. Yeah.
Okay, I have a knee replacement scheduled for the 26th of July. And so let's make it before that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I think that's super. I'm just really super.
Yeah.
Tom, I have a liturgical question if I can. Have you ever heard of that on Palm Sunday, that in lieu of doing the 3 readings, you can do the entire Passion?
You mean, in other words, skip the first 2 readings?
Yeah.
You know, I think there is something to that. I know that it's standard that for pastoral reasons you can choose only 1 first reading.
Yeah, because you also have a gospel in the beginning.
Yeah, but that's only if you actually do the
blessing.
palm ceremony.
Yeah.
I think that you can, if you don't have palms, you can omit the palm ceremony.
Right. Well, I'm gonna have. I'm saying mass on Sunday by invitation at the Irish Cultural Center in
Oh,
Boston.
how wonderful! How
I have
wonderful.
never been there.
Oh, with the Irish, you can do anything.
Well, yeah. Well, of course, and
The
the
messier,
palms,
the better.
the palms just happen to be green.
Yeah, right.
Did
Well,
you
if
say
you-
you had never been at that place?
I have never been there. Yeah,
It's
Dominic,
You're Irish.
God
In
forgive me.
Boston, in
Yeah.
Boston, Frank?
It's just outside in Canton,
Oh, yeah.
Mass. It's 15 miles away. Yeah.
So you're
So
thinking
I-
of doing the whole Passion and omitting the first two readings?
Yeah, in lieu
Okay,
of the
now
first.
I'm gonna interrupt for a minute. We're having an ice cream social. And so Sandra has brought me a big thing of strawberry ice cream.
Hi,
I hope
Sandra.
you guys don't, I hope you don't mind if I eat my ice cream in front of you.
Well,
So
Just so you pass it around.
I'm happy to do it. Here we go.
oh, looks good.
Might get your phone messy.
Yeah. Well, at least, at least you can't, it's inappropriate to be eating it while we're reading the Passion, Tim.
To be honest,
Okay.
Frank, yours was a kind of question, and I don't mean this as a put down, but it might sound like it. Yours was a kind of question that soured me on being further involved in the officialdom of liturgy, because it tends to be ritualistic trivia rather than substantive as to liturgical principles and how we apply them. And
Well, yeah, I mean, tell you where it came from was someone just mentioned it to me this morning here in Boston, where I am. And I wondered about it because I thought that given they have mass once a month to a very diverse group that's not a settled parish,
Mhm.
that while on the one hand it sounds like liturgical trivia, on the other, in that setting, it might be pastorally sensitive.
And see, I think that the pastoral question is, what how should I put it? How do we celebrate the liturgy of the word? How do we celebrate the word to its greatest effect?
Right. And my comeback on that would be, is in fact the value of people hearing the full Passion, reason and focusing in your preaching on that, reason enough to say that the other two readings would detract. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Detract from attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a valid question, and I think whatever answer comes to
Right.
you as a result of
Right.
asking that question
Right.
is valid, and I'm not going to put any time looking for some rubrical justification for that.
No. I was just
Which is
thinking
what,
that.
the question often comes to me, well,
Yeah.
what do the rubrics say? And
Right.
I'm often tempted, and sometimes did say, hell, you can check the damn book as well as I can.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's exactly true. But on the other hand, the fact is that when someone suggested that to me, I kind of began to savor that as a pastorally appropriate in this specific setting,
Yeah.
rather than dickering
Yeah.
around with.
Precisely. And then the question becomes, how to best immerse ourselves in the Passion,
Right.
because one person reading it, yada, 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 wouldn't do much good.
No, that
Shakespearean actor reading it, like Alec, what was his name? He did the Gospel of Mark, his one-man play. That could be so engaging.
Mhm.
If it's really read properly by one person. You do
Right.
this part thing, and that can be very engaging, or to my mind, also be very artificial.
Yeah.
So working with somebody about, okay, how can we best organize this lengthy story in a way that is most engaging
Right.
people. one of the things that I've come up with, and you might think about this, you need to rehearse people in it, but
Yeah,
we can try to do that dramatized
Right.
three-part thing
right.
to just have a different reader read each scene and then have a little pause for meditation and then go to the next scene of the Passion read by another person. And they have to be somebody who is capable of engaging in a storytelling reading.
Yeah, yeah.
But that
Great.
I think could be very effective to break the Passion
Yeah,
up into individual stories and then have maybe a little bit of meditation in between them, or a
Yeah.
little commentary, a little homiletic commentary.
Right.
We tend to make our rubrics determine how our homiletics should proceed, and I
Mhm.
think our homiletics need to at least say, hey, we need to do what is most effective rather than just, okay, there's a reading. Now I'll give a homily and now we're over and done with it.
Right.
Yeah. So
Amen to that.
Well,
Yeah,
that's good. That's good. I'm glad I asked, even
Frank,
though,
I am very, I'm sorry, go, Frank, finish. I've got,
but even though I think you had a suspicion that I was coming at it from a different point of view than I was.
yeah, well, that's the way I did. I kind of knew better, but nonetheless had to use it as an occasion for my standard rant. And I think I wrote in my record, I think I've gotten 2 rants out today.
Frank, I'm really glad that you mentioned that because I'm a lector on Palm Sunday, this coming Sunday. And we've done the last 3-4 years, the entire gospel with 3 voices, Jesus, the narrator, and the crowd. And we've tried to make it as dramatic as possible, as acceptably possible. We don't certainly want to crazy it up. But this year, the guy who runs the lector group said we're only going to have the 2 normal readings, the first reader lector, second lector, that's going to be me, and that's it. And both the first and reader and myself called him back and said, hey, wait a minute, what about the gospel with the 3 parts? And he said, that's what I've been told. And I've tried to ask questions and I get no responses. Now, very briefly, the pastor that we have is not long for our parish. He came in a year ago. I think I mentioned him to you last time, actually. And he is like a hermit. He doesn't like to be seen, doesn't talk much, and has now appointed a woman who has taken possession of every single piece, liturgy, music, sacristan's work, etc. She's this very, very aggressive woman. And she's the one who told our lector, presider or director, that that's what was going to happen. I had occasion to talk with the pastor while we were waiting in the vestibule about it. And he said, you've got me confused. And I said, well, last thing I want to do is confuse you, but I understand we're not going to have the gospel read in 3 parts. And he said, well, why not? And I said, well, that was our directive. And he said, okay, well, let's just go out and celebrate Mass now. We had to go. And so we left. And I've been trying to determine whether it would be of value or worth for me to make an appointment with him, and it's only 2 days from now, and say, Father, do you understand what's going on? We can have a first reading and a second reading, and then apparently there is an alternative gospel reading that does not have parts. Is
Right.
that right, Tom?
A shortened
Yeah,
version.
there's a shorter version.
Yeah. And we
If you want to get right to the nails,
and,
cut out all the other incidental stuff.
and I've been here in this parish for 25 years, and every year we have the tripart voices, all that stuff. Are you sure that's what you want? And I'm wondering whether he even has adverted to this thing and just left it to this woman who really is a tyrant, although she can be very helpful. Is that weird, Tom? Wouldn't it be more effective and expressive of where we are in the liturgy in Lent to have that prelude?
Well, I suppose so. And again, a lot, so much depends on the context, and if it's just something that you do to be doing it, it
No.
can become, sort of deadening. I certainly don't want to get into all the dynamics of how the pastor and this
No.
woman are relating to each other and relating to the parish, but it sounds like there's a lot of dysfunction going on there.
Much. He's going to be gone in July.
And there's the other element is, insofar as we tend to celebrate and affirm and wish there were more of the age of the laity and lay leadership and all of that, there is also the tyranny of lay clericalism, which just sounds like there's a good example of.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yes, classic.
So
My question is, I'm wondering if it is worthwhile at this stage to even get involved in that.
I agree, and that's, I guess, why I'm grateful that Frank brought this up, and
Yeah.
I get a chance to ask you about it.
And if you kept pushing this with the pastor, that might maybe push him to do something that he's not prepared to do, and that is confront Monsignoressa.
Yeah.
There's an Irish story about that, about the bishop calling the priests together to complain that housekeepers, because every Irish priest has, at least they used to, they had their own housekeeper. So there are 4 priests in the parish. They were 4 different houses, all with a separate housekeeper. So, and so the bishop made his pitch. The pastor is the pastor and the decision maker in the parish, et cetera, et cetera. So this pastor came home and he said, Mary, we have to talk. And so she came in and he explained to her what the bishop had said and told her that, so in the future, he said, I wanted to be clear to you, I'm the decision maker here. I'm one that makes the decision. And she said, oh, yes, Father. Oh, that's very, very well. Of course I'll adhere to that, but you'll go to no more bishops' meetings.
Oh, that's the class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I wonder if that's a good segue into the article that Bob the carpenter sent to us. What was it, yesterday?
What did you think? I know it was last minute, but it appeared just in yesterday's NCR, so it got my attention.
I personally found it very
I have
fascinating.
a doctor's appointment. I'm very sorry, and I'll watch the video, but I have to go. I've got a doctor's phone visit coming up. God bless you, Tom.
Okay.
Thanks for getting back connected.
Take care,
Amen.
Johnny. God bless you.
Bye, John.
Bye-bye, John.
Bye-bye.
Speak up, Bob, what that was. I haven't had a chance to read it. What are you
haven't either.
referencing?
Go ahead, Bob.
Bob
I'm-
Charpentier.
Yeah, I'm unable to pull it up. I sent it to you yesterday, and it's the article in the NCR was kind of a contemporary understanding of sexuality, and a more contemporary interpretation. The author took inspiration from Cardinal McElroy's series with regard to taking a look at the whole notion of the predominance of sexual sin historically, to the detriment, let's say, of sins related to justice in this world, as only one example. What I appreciated about the article was the historical perspective.
Yeah.
And you might appreciate that too, going way back. And looking at the big picture, really, and seeing how we have ended up today, or at least suggesting where we have ended up today, and also at the very end, reference of a couple of authors and books who have gotten some attention. And I did not. The woman in particular is of interest to me, and it's a book I think that I will order. Sorry, I can't be more specific. I did not take notes and or detail, but and everything that I sort of mumbled my way through just now, you will find in that article if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, I and I can't say that I fully at this point buy everything that he said, but he certainly did put a much a kind of sympathetic and yet damning perspective on the history of the development of our attitudes toward sexuality that has constituted Catholic moral theology for the last few hundred years. And what I found very interesting is it seemed to develop mainly as a monastic thing among committed celibates as to kind of how we handle the temptations to not be faithful to a commitment to celibacy, or the monastic vows. And then that monastic not technique, but monastic principles sort of became the moral principles that everybody was supposed to follow. And a monk's view of what he should be doing to protect his commitment to chastity is not necessarily the same thing that a married couple or anybody not under vows should be doing to try to integrate their own sexuality.
Right. The title of the article, I just pulled it up. It's Time for a Catholic Ethic that sees sexuality as, which I like, which sees sexuality as a gift. That's new and different, not a curse. And the author, James Keenan, I recognize his name. I'm not that familiar with his with the whole course of his writings.
He's the top. He's considered the best moral theologian in our country at this point.
Thanks, Bob.
Bob, moral theologian across the board, or on sexuality?
Across the board. Jim Keenan has just published a book called The History of Catholic Theological Ethics.
Yes.
The professor of Boston College, it's expensive, but someone gave me $100 gift certificate at Amazon. This was $50 and it's paper.
Yikes.
So he is, Keenan has been writing in Catholic. By the way, wrote his doctoral thesis for Fuchs. Father Fuchs was his, and Bob and I had Fuchs in class, and Bob Charpentier, I presume you had him there too.
Yeah.
So he's a big player in the whole area of Catholic theological ethics. So I suspect that this article, I see it, I haven't really read it, is a distillation of, his work, his most recent work.
Here's
Now,
a little.
Frank,
Here's a little.
Frank,
Go ahead, Tom.
Frank, will you read that as you're lying down, ready to go to sleep, and it helps you get to sleep, or is this going to be sitting with a beer and a Guinness and saying, "Oh, I'm going to knock this out this weekend"? It looks like a pretty significant book to me.
Yeah, it's probably neither, Tim.
He's gonna be a little busy
I
this
think-
weekend.
I think I'll fly to the Carolinas and find a nice beach to sit and read.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
Florida.
Tim, you might use it as a book discussion group with your Perseistas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
This-
His-
There's a really a good little paragraph here. Let me read it because I think it ties in everything you guys have said. It says, Christian moral teachings on sexuality evolved somewhat haphazardly over the centuries, with successive generations appropriating earlier positions that often had been based on very different premises. In general, a series of fairly negative accretions were added one upon the other until in the 17th century, we have basically an absolutely negative estimation of sexual desires. That's interesting the way he put it. Thus, with reason, historian James Brundage claims in the name of the book, Law, Sex, and Christian Society in Medieval Europe, quotes, the Christian horror of sex has for centuries placed enormous strain on individual consciences and self-esteem in the Western world, end quotes. Wow, that's
for sure.
Right. Tailing off what you're saying, the reference, Ned, to the theologian, a woman theologian, Mercy Sister Margaret Farley. I think she's a professor at Yale.
I'm right.
He references her book, the title of it, just the title, Just Love, a framework for Christian sexual ethics. And what got my attention as well was it always gets my attention, say, oh, I'm going to take a look at this. It got a quote notification from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith that, quote, it risks grave harm for the faithful. That always gets my attention with regard to risking grave harm for the faithful. So she has something to say.
Yeah.
And what it basically, he goes on to say, and her book has become a staple in the writings of most theologians.
Yeah. She's retired now, but I think, yes, she's very prominent at Yale. Did you cut that out of the paper, or did you get that on? Because I didn't get what you sent. If I may not be on your list.
No, you're right.
I do have the, I have the NCR, so
Right.
I'll be able to check that. But
Yeah.
and I bought the book too. The one that Frank bought, I bought it, but I'm going to be on a ship for 2 weeks, so I had to have something to read.
Well,
So
yeah.
I got it in my Kindle.
Right. Yeah.
I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, Bob, I think it's yesterday's NCR, it may have been the day before, but all you have to do is just Google the title. It's Time for a Catholic Ethic That Sees Sexuality as a Gift, Not a Curse.
Yeah.
And or recent articles by James Keenan.
Probably
Bob B.
appropriate
B.
place an article like that on a ship, Bob.
Pardon?
A blessing rather than a curse.
Especially
A
for
blessing rather than a curse
especially for a chaplain,
on a ship, yeah.
Bob Benoit, where is your cruise? Where are you going to go cruising?
It goes, it's only got 2 stops. It goes out of Miami and out to that thing that Royal Caribbean put together. It's their own island, and they've got all this stuff really for families, I think, mainly in kids. And then they get out to Puerto Rico, and then they make their way back to Miami. So there aren't a lot of stops in it. But yeah, and then they put me on for 2 weeks, which was a surprise. I thought it was going to be chaplaining for 1 week, and then all of a sudden I saw, oh, I got 2 weeks. So I think it's the same thing twice over.
Now, let me ask you, do you get comped? Are your tickets and costs comped by the cruise line, or how does that work?
Well, they don't pay us for being on, but they don't charge us for a room or for food and all the rest of it. So we have a free sail. And with this one, even they have begun, and this is a change to my recollection. They paid for my flight down to Miami and back home.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And they have me going down tomorrow, and they booked me in a hotel that's right near the airport. And then, they paid for that. So all I have to do is get from that hotel over to the place where the ship is going to be.
Right.
So they're treating us very well.
Yeah, and this Holland America, right?
No, this is Royal Caribbean.
Oh, huh. Are you regularly then doing it for Royal Caribbean, or are you doing
they send out the schedule for the year, and you can put in, I'm interested in 1, 2, 3, these 3.
Gotcha.
And the office that's based out in Texas, it's the Apostolate of the Sea. Then they organize, they say, okay, you can have this one. So she knows, I think there's 400 and some priests that do this.
Magic.
And so they can pick the ships that they want to go on. With Holland America, it doesn't cost you anything. It's rare, I think, that they pay for you to get there. I've never experienced that particularly, but only one can be there and in the room. So with Royal Caribbean, I'm not doing with anybody this time, but my brother went with me on one last fall from Barcelona to Barbados. And so we had the same room, and it was just a great thing. And he didn't have to pay either.
See, I
He
guess.
just needed to get there.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's a good blessing.
Yeah, it is a good blessing.
No,
Good for you.
I think of another B word, boondoggle. Not a blessing, a boondoggle.
Well, we keep the ship safe, so everybody is happy.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Do you have a special COVID exorcism?
No, we have to walk in with a test that we show that we don't have any evidence of COVID. I got another booster just the other day, just to make sure. I called my doctor, and he said, yeah, you better do that. I had one at the end of October last fall. So anyway, the idea is they don't want somebody.
what's a working day on a cruise like, Bob? What do you,
Well,
you
it's-
say mass?
Yeah, a mass every day, every day.
Okay,
And they put that up and you have to do that. And then on Sundays you get the theater. And,
Yeah.
for Easter, it'll probably, I'm not sure how they're going to do it because most of these cruises, both of these cruises leave on Sunday. And so,
Yeah.
the one group goes off and another group comes in. So I'm not sure how it'll happen on Easter Sunday, except
Yeah.
that, presumably the ships that's coming into Miami on Saturday, whoever the chaplain is on that ship, has the Sunday mass on Saturday. That's what I project, because I can't get on the ship until 3:00.
yeah.
And then we have to get organized and everything. So probably next week, I will do Easter Sunday on Saturday. And then the second week, it'll just be a regular Sunday. But well, it'll be Mercy Sunday, I think. It's kind of like a retreat for me. I mean, it's quiet. You can do what you want. You're there if something goes wrong and somebody needs to see a priest, you're there and you're available to them. But they don't really, they don't expect much. You have to pay for your own wine. That's the big problem.
Oh my God.
I was on one of those cruises once. It was an Irish music cruise.
Okay.
And the chaplain, the priest who was a chaplain, was one of the finest dancers I have ever seen to Irish music. With some of the most beautiful women on the cruise were anxious to dance with Father.
Was that you?
No, I was there with my wife.
Frank
So-
and Tim,
so,
I've
Tim,
just noticed
Tim,
you're
full
wearing
of
the same
fuel for
shirt.
you. I'm
But we
sorry.
seem to be,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
we are. Yeah. Yeah. We coordinated that.
Mhm.
Yeah. We talked before. Hey, Frank, it seems like your internet is better.
No,
Yeah,
I'm just
much better.
on the phone.
Oh, okay.
I'm on my cell phone.
Yeah,
The internet is supposed to improve in a month or so, but the cell phone seems to be working fine.
it works great. You just don't get the gallery.
I did this time. Somehow I must have pressed the right button.
Huh.
I've got you guys all in gallery in your full glory.
On the phone.
Oh, about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
your phone, you should be able to punch that on your phone anytime to see others. I won't be able to be with you on both of the next 2 weeks at least. And then after that, I'm going to spend 2 weeks down in Nashville with my brother. But unless he has something lined up for Friday, I'll probably be with you those next 2 weeks after that.
Okay.
Your brother,
Next
your brother
week
lives in
is Good Friday, so shall we still plan to meet? I'm game.
Yep, I am too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to leave a little early because I'm on here 1 to 3.
Yeah, I am too.
Where are you going to be, Tim? Where are you off to next?
We'll be home on Tuesday, and then in a week we'll be going to a campground with another Airstream group near a place called Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is kind of like central north of the state, and that's just a 4-day rally. So we've been gone for 3 weeks now, and so and 3 weeks is not hard for us. It's I can go 21 days without doing laundry, so that's because I wear a week at a time. So and if you shower at least once a week and change your underwear once a week, I can go 3 weeks, which is
Say no more. Say no more.
my wife just said tell the truth.
Frank, your phone is not being kind to you right now.
Say that again, Frank, because it was all meshed.
Oh, okay. Well. Well, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No. Okay. I was just gonna say, it's just that you have to throw away 3 weeks of clothes before you go home.
yeah, how
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, boys.
Where
and
did
girls.
where did Ned go? Tom, do you know where Ned is?
Well, he's not in front of his camera, that's for sure. He may do what many of us have to do during these 2 hours after having coffee.
Just so. Oh, but not a by the way, but sort of by the way, George Ferrick and I took a walk yesterday afternoon. We had a lovely walk over to Blake Gardens here in Kensington, and he wanted to be sure to extend his best wishes to everyone. I know he's going to be looking at this, and so I apologize in advance, George Ferrick, for telling them you weren't up to your usual handsome best, because a week ago, Friday, he had major beat up by the dermatologists and on his face and head, and so he looked pretty well beat up yesterday, pulling his hat down over. Sorry if I'm overdoing that, George, but we had a great walk anyway, and so he had some family stuff today, as you saw in his notes. So, but he wasn't looking his best, to say the least. He also commented that a few of you were involved in the NAC online communication, and he complimented Bob Bono for having done a really great job for facilitating that and keeping people down to 3-minute kind of pieces of feedback and stuff like that. He liked the way you handled that, Bob.
Oh, he did. Well, that's very kind of him.
Yeah, and he did enjoy the connection and commented how quite a number of you guys, classmates, have, quote, turned out really very well. And
It was a good game. Good game.
yeah, it sounded like it was. Sounded like it was a really good reunion.
I couldn't get on technologically, visually, but I got on, by sound, by phone. So that worked out.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Good for us all. So it's like this is good. Most of you guys were in the seminary together too. You were all 80, 81, right in that sphere. And we have gathered fundamentally every 5 years. And what we're looking for now is probably to have it twice a year, every 6 months or so.
Because time is running short.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and plus we can have it visually now without having to get on an airplane.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, could we have done that back in 2011? This is a wonderful thing that we have available to us in terms of being in touch with other people. So it's a great gift.
Right.
It really is. And I'm wondering, it's 5 minutes to 12 here on the West Coast. Should we wind down now that
I think we should, but we should also tell George Ferrick, especially if he's watching this, that he has a unique perspective on life. And I, for one, miss that in not having him be part of this more frequently than he can be.
The problem is to get control of his calendar.
Right.
If possible.
I agree with Frank, because I don't think he's been on in 2 or 3 months.
Right.
Yeah. So Bob C., it's up to you.
your next walk with him,
Yeah, we walk our doggies.
And tell him that Dermatologist or no,
See
none
this
of us
pretty-
have really anything greatly to talk about.
See this pretty yellow lab here. He goes back to guide dogs tomorrow.
Oh,
Poor thing, he's gonna miss you.
Yeah, I kind of miss him, and we miss one another, and then there'll be another one waiting in line down the
no,
road.
that's Gruyere, right?
That's the Gruyere, yes.
Gruyere, yeah.
Yes. So,
Okay, happy Easter, everybody.
Happy Easter.
Thank you.
God bless you all, and let's continue to pray for one another and pray
Right.
for George.
Right.
And
Thank you, Tom.
amen.
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Amen.
Okay,
All right.
Happy
now
Easter.
I gotta find the magic button here. There it is. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.